Let's meet the panel this morning. In D.C., we have Michael Shank. He's the vice president at the Institute for Economics and Peace. Those are two things that I guess should always go together. Good to see you, Michael.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
And to my right, Liz Peek, columnist for the Fiscal Times and FoxNews.com contributor. At Liz Peek, if you want to tweet her, which I like to follow her on Twitter. Good morning.
Good morning.
Michael, I want to start with you. New Hampshire is typically one of those states where you have a lot of independent voters. I'm not making news by saying that, but it's an interesting primary because they can kind of toggle and vote however they want to vote. Like if you're a Republican, you don't have to vote in the Republican primary only. You can vote any kind of way you want to vote. Just call yourself an independent. What does this state think about Barack Obama, the current president, given that landscape of voter, do you think?
Well, I think Mitt Romney hit it right when he was talking about the economy and it must be better. I think New Hampshire says a few things. It says, one, money can buy votes. If you look at the three Republican candidates who spent the most money in New Hampshire, it was Huntsman first, Ron Paul second, Mitt Romney third, and they came out in the top three in terms of yesterday's primary. There's also a trend away from Republican votes in New Hampshire towards independent voting, and I think that heralds kind of a general American tide of general disgruntlement with the economy, and so they're trending away from Republican and Democrat. It'll be interesting to see if we see that spike in independent voting nationwide or if it's just New Hampshire.
Well, why is it important for us to know that money can buy votes?
Well, there's a new thing out. Everyone knows it. It's called the Super PAC, and Washington Post editorial board wrote a piece yesterday, and they're generally pretty conservative. I was surprised with the piece. It was criticizing pretty harshly the Super PAC, saying it undermines democracy. I mean, this is what Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, is talking about, getting the money out of politics. And the Super PAC is kind of opening the door to any money spent, and we're seeing it in Iowa, we saw it in New Hampshire, we'll see it in South Carolina and Florida, millions spent not only in presidential candidates, but soon on congressional House, Senate races as well.
I think it's kind of funny that the CEO of Starbucks wants to get the money out of politics, because he's been pretty vocal, and he's got a heck of a lot of money. Liz?
He does.
I think the interesting pushback on the super PACs is going to be that it's been the liberals who were so opposed to the Citizens United ruling and the fact that corporate money could come into politics, but it's the Republicans who are going to be scarred by this in this election, because you have all these moguls going at each other, the Newt Gingrich mogul versus the Romney mogul. And my objection to the super PACs and all this money is it's sort of unaccountable. What I mean by that is when you have campaigns spending money to defeat each other, at least there's some semblance of civility. We are losing that totally now because it's sort of like, oh, I didn't do this, you know, my super PAC did.
Let me ask you about that, because we've heard that from specifically Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich, because those are the two who've been, and let's call it what it is. I know Mr. Gingrich thinks that he's running an all-peace campaign, but there is some mudslinging he's going in both directions. But there's this sort of like, well, the stink's not on my shoe, I didn't do it.
Absolutely, and in some respects it's true. I mean, I don't know how much collaboration all these
I don't know how much time they would have to collaborate
exactly.
Anyway.
I mean, so if I decide that I really want to slam Ron Paul, which, by the way, I wouldn't mind doing right now because I think he's a bit of a spoiler in this race, you know, I could raise some money and run any kind of ad, and there's no accountability at all.
All right. So, can we put the results up on the screen from FoxNews.com? And you know what I love about the show? We're married to the website. And so that means that whatever we have up on the screen, you can probably find on your own, too. And there it is. There are the results right there. Ron Paul, and I love this picture of him. I know it wasn't taken for these results, but he does kind of look incredulous there, doesn't he?
He should be.
He's like, hot dang, I did it. And you're not happy about that.
Well, here's the thing. Ron Paul is a fringe candidate. He appeals to young people, and he appeals to, by the way, people in New Hampshire who have always considered themselves extremely independent and sort of determined to go their own path. I think the biggest message that came out of New Hampshire is that people who are serious about defeating Obama voted for Romney. And I think that is the message that should go to South Carolina. Who else is going to defeat President Obama in 2012?
Michael, I want to get your response. We're going to roll a little bit here. Mitt Romney last night after winning, they each spoke, the three of them. And actually we heard from Rick Santorum as well. But I want to start with Mitt Romney because he talks about Barack Obama. And he talks about the fact that, well, running on the it could be worse platform won't work against me. Can we watch that real quickly?
We still believe in the hope, the promise, and the dream of America. We still believe in that shining city on a hill. We know that the future of this country is better than 8 or 9% unemployment. It's better than $15 trillion in debt. It's better than the misguided policies and broken promises of the last 3 years and the failed leadership of one man. The president has run out of ideas. Now he's running out of excuses.
So, Michael Shank, I realize that it's New Hampshire, and you know, Mitt Romney has a house there, and I guess you could call it his hood, because it's part of, you know, it's so close to Massachusetts. But they seem to really like that.
Yeah, well, in terms of holding anyone culpable for the state of the economy, I think that's a result of 30 years, both Democrats and Republicans, in terms of tax, trade, and labor policy.
You're not going to blame President Bush, are you?
I'm not going to what?
You're not going to blame President Bush, are you?
I'm
holding
holding
you
everyone.
Going down the past road, and I'm going to have to cut your
No,
mic.
no. I'm holding all D's and R's responsible over the last 30 years. I mean,
Okay.
It's a culmination of 30 years. It's not just Obama, it's not just Bush, it's not just
All
Reagan.
right.
But in terms of making it better, which is Romney's point, which was the clip before we came on the show, I mean, South Carolina is the big test, because Iowa and New Hampshire's economies are not near as bad as South Carolina. South Carolina is one of the top 10 most violent states. They have the most homicide, most violent crime,
Yes.
most incarceration, highest poverty, highest income inequality, lowest educational opportunity, lowest graduation, highest teenage pregnancy, highest infant mortality. So if he wants to make the economy better, South Carolinians are going to be like, hey, we need help here. Interestingly, the state motto for South Carolina is, while I breathe, I hope. It's Latin. Cicero is known to kind of utter it first. And that kind of basic, can I breathe, can I put food on the table, can I pay for my rent, the median earning for an individual in South Carolina is $23,000. So in terms of fixing the economy, South Carolina is going to need Mitt Romney's fix, most poignantly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We have another soundbite from Mitt Romney, and I only bring this up because he's talking about believe and hope. And I'm curious, let's watch that. And then, Liz, I want to get your take on this, because it sounds a little Obama-esque. Let's watch it. I mean, look, he says hope more than once. Let's watch.
And this president wakes up every morning, looks out across America, and is
Wait,
proud to
that's
announce
not the right soundbite.
it could be worse. It could be worse? That is not what it means to be an American. It could be worse. Of course not. What defines us as Americans is our unwavering conviction that we know it must be better and it will be better.
All right, I think we ran the hope one first. My apologies. But you want to talk about his optimism.
Well, two things. First of all, I wrote something this week about the fact that I think President Obama now has embraced this incredibly negative message that the United States has all these problems because rich versus poor, because the people have been, kind of dealt a bad hand, et cetera. I just think he's gotten into it, and his entire platform and campaign right now is that the Republicans are so intransigent. I just think that's a really lousy message, and that Americans like the optimism that they heard from Romney. Second point is that's about the first time I've heard Romney say anything memorable. And I don't mean that his ideas aren't good, but I've never heard his language measure up to his ideas until last night. And if you saw, today all the newspapers had that quote about Obama running out of time and running out of ideas and running out of excuses. That's a great line. I don't know if he has someone new working on his new speechmaker, but I was very cheered because I think usually his language is extremely mundane, and it matters. It matters what you say.
I had mentioned before we went to the soundbite there, and I again apologize. I think we ran them transcribed there, one in place of the other. That it did remind me of President Obama when he was a candidate, when he was saying the hopelessness is not lost. So, is there any part of your party, and I don't want to make you, the voice of the Democrat Party, Michael, by any means. But is there any kind of wave, do you think, coming among the Obama administration now as they gear up to go against whomever is nominated by Republicans to deal with what happened to the hope?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Liz, because what Romney does best is paint a vision of hope. Those were the first words that I believed as well.
Yeah, but that was your candidate's job. That's what he said he owned. The road to hope.
Yeah, that's right. Romney does not do a good job criticizing Obama. He appears disingenuous. Listen, I think Romney's got South Carolina in the bag. He's got Governor Haley on board. Senator DeMint has kind of offered his support, though not a full endorsement. Grover Norquist tweeting last night saying it's going to be a Romney-Huntsman ticket that will get the Electoral College in Utah. Even Karl Rove's super PAC kind of throwing money behind Romney. So I think Romney's got it. It's just going to be a question of who's number 2 in the social conservative category. If we follow kind of the McCain, Huckabee, Thompson track for South Carolina a few years ago, you're probably going to see Romney leading as the establishment candidate, and then Santorum, Gingrich splitting the social conservative vote in South Carolina.
You know, we had shown the numbers, the results from last night. Were there any surprises last night?
I actually thought the surprises were that almost every category was top-heavy for Romney. The only group, I think, demographically that did not go for Romney was young people who went for Paul in a certain category.
What is Ron Paul saying that people want to hear? I mean, I know you think he's fracturing the
he's
vote.
anti-government. He wants to legalize marijuana, wants to quit all wars. I mean, look, young people who don't have possibly the perspective or the gravity of saying, okay, that's great, those are super ideas, but they don't really work in running a country, they love Ron Paul. And there is something kind of wacky about his determined pursuit of libertarianism that is sort of appealing to people.
You know, one of the things he talked about, and we heard from each candidate, he said last night that, well, actually, let's listen to this one first. He did give Governor Romney a call. And then part of what he said, and I don't want to say that these two things necessarily went together, but the second part of this kind of speaks to what you're talking about, because he talks about our relations with the former Soviet Union. And did you watch?
I didn't.
You see this?
I didn't, but I can imagine.
Let's listen to a couple of things from Ron Paul, if we can.
I called Governor Romney a short while ago before he gave his talk and congratulate him because he certainly had a clear-cut victory, but we're nibbling at his heels.
All right, and this is what he had to say about the Soviets. Watch this, and keep in mind what Liz had said, that you think he's kind of on the fringe here, but let's watch and listen.
We're flat out broke. Fortunately, we did not have to fight the Soviets. The Soviets brought themselves down for economic reasons. Do you know that they were so foolish and thought themselves so bold that they could pursue their world empire that they invaded Afghanistan? But we will come home, but if we do it now, calmly and deliberately, we can save our economy here at home.
What is he talking about? I mean, we just left Iraq. I mean,
he's talking about the money we've spent in these formidable, hostile places, and a lot of people think it's been money wasted. I mean, that's a debate that's going to go on forever.
So does he have a core audience? I'm not talking about Michael. Well, obviously, within your party, he must have one. I'm wondering how many Democrats like Ron Paul when it comes to the war talk. But does he have a core audience in your party?
Oh, I think. Well, I'm sorry.
Well, hold on one second. I want to ask Liz this. Among Republicans,
in terms of Republicans, sure, because there are a lot of Republicans whose credo is that they're anti-big government, and what that means is that they are anti-government getting involved in all kinds of things, including foreign affairs, that are not completely central to everyone's daily life. Most Americans cannot imagine what our people in Afghanistan have to do with their daily life. What they do know is that the taxman taking part of their paycheck does invade their daily life, and that is the trade-off that leads to admiration for libertarian. I mean, I get it. I just think it's not at all reasonable to imagine that Ron Paul could be president of the United States. So I apologize to Ron Paul fans, but I just don't see that.
You know what? I did not do this yet, but I want to invite everybody to get their comments and questions in on the live chat. I'm signed on now, but I do know, if recent history serves, a lot of people like Ron Paul.
Yeah, they do. They do.
And you know, you say he's, well, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I understand you to be saying that he's out on the fringes.
Well, he's a little bit of a rebellion candidate.
Are you more worried
about
about the fact that he's stealing within the primary season, or that he might run as an independent third party?
Oh, I don't think he'll do that. I can't imagine that there's enough organization or money to allow him to do that. I don't think that's a threat.
All right, here's a question, and I want you to put on your neutrality strategy hat if you can, Michael. Off the live chat, Ray Gresham writes, if Ron Paul is so bad, why did he manage to beat the rest of the pack? Even John Huntsman. He has another word that he calls John Huntsman, but I'm not going to call him a name. What's your thought on that?
Well, Liz, I was going to say the Twitterverse is going to light up in response to some of your comments because Ron Paul does have an incredible base. He's like a high school history teacher, a politics teacher, who's gotten the students really excited about civic engagement. So I think there's something to be said for that, and if Romney and Santorum and Gingrich want to pick up those voters, they too have to think about exciting the base in kind of civic engagement, getting people involved in politics that have never been involved before. Listen, I interviewed Ron Paul a couple years ago, and I think he's got some resonance in both parties in terms of the money we're spending abroad, the $3.7 trillion that we've spent in Afghanistan and Iraq. His ping-pong comment at the New Hampshire primary about dealing with China, I think, has some merit in terms of how do we avert future wars. But in terms of South Carolina, he's not going to do well because the big defense industry is located heavily in South Carolina. So his comments about, downsizing defense, downsizing Pentagon spending isn't going to resonate in South Carolina because of the defense industry.
What's the problem for John Huntsman? He raised a ton of cash.
I must say, he is the continuing mystery, isn't he? Particularly in New Hampshire, it was
Why
felt
does
that
he
this...
stay in it?
I don't know, but...
I mean, can he win? No, I want to know. I'm curious. Why does he stay in it? Is there a role that he thinks is not being played? Is there a message that he thinks is not out there? And is there anything that he thinks he'll bring to South Carolina that would shake even a guy like Rick Perry, who didn't even participate in the primary in New Hampshire?
I can't imagine, honestly. I think the only thing I would say is that we have seen candidate after candidate have these surges. In Rick Santorum's case, the surge was helped by really serious groundwork in Iowa. But if you're a candidate on the fringe like Huntsman or sort of constantly in the back of the pack, you may hope that you're going to get a surge at some point and that that's going to make you a serious contender. I think at this point he's done.
I'm reading on the live chat right now a couple of things. People like Ron Paul. They like kind of his theatrics mostly is what I'm reading. If Ron Paul manages to win the nomination, the Donald will run with Newt as his VP, Will Brandt. I'm not sure where they're going with that. Chris Gibbons says Huntsman is staying to get the vice president pick. What do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think... For one thing, I think that Romney is going to have a real serious conservative running mate. And everyone has Marco Rubio in their sights. I hope it turns out to be Marco Rubio. I think it's a very good choice. Despite the Northeast concentration, I'd love to see Chris Christie as his running mate. And I don't think that's totally outside the realm of possibility.
What do you mean, despite the Northeast concentration?
Well, you got Massachusetts governor, New Jersey governor. There's a big rest of the country out there that wants representation. So I think that's a problem for Christie. But by the way, in terms of South Carolina, I think people are way underplaying Nikki Haley's role in this. I mean, she's come out for Romney. She's incredibly popular in her state. I think that's going to be a very big weapon. What do you think? I think that's. I think she's going to be pretty powerful.
Nikki Haley in South Carolina. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I agree with Liz. I mean, it's a huge endorsement for Romney in terms of popularity in South Carolina.
But can he win that? Can he win that state?
I think so.
What do you say to a guy like Rick Perry, governor of Texas?
Go home.
Ouch. Well, by the way, there is some contention on who will drop out next. K, just the letter K, the initial K on the live chat says Huntsman is next to drop out.
I would think either he or Perry should be really looking at the door at this point. I can't imagine. Who's funding these guys? Who's funding Perry at this point?
Let's talk about the Democrats for a second, Michael. I'm curious about where Mr. Obama is and talking about jobs. Because now he's doing something called the insourcing of American jobs. That's his speech today. He's going to be talking about how to keep jobs here at home. This is a president who lost his chief of staff again just this week. What's going on with the president and kind of his push forward to get votes in this country? And he knows the economy is issue number one for most Americans at this point.
Right. A couple things. Come February, Congress is going to have to look at payroll tax cut again, unemployment insurance, and the doc fix. But in terms of anything make it in America, I think that's bipartisan at this point, but it's not going to pass Congress. This year is kind of a done year in terms of legislation simply because Republicans won't budge because they won't want to give credit to the Democrats in the Senate or even Obama. So even if Obama is talking about make it in America, which we should, make it in America, we seem to outsource everything already in the last 30 years, and that goes back to my previous point about kind of trade policy and labor policy. But I don't think he's going to be able to move anything forward. From here on out, it's just going to be messaging.
What do you think, Liz?
I would really love to hope you're wrong, because I think our country seriously needs lots of things done. We have lots of problems that really need to be addressed. And I think the electorate is so tired of this bitter trench warfare with Congress versus the president. And I don't think they're giving him a pass on this, and they're certainly not giving the GOP a pass on this. I would really like to see our leaders make an effort to actually move forward on some things that do have bipartisan support.
You know, I'm seeing something on the live chat, and before I let you go, Michael, because we don't want to lose you off the satellite bird before we hear one last time from you. I'm curious. It says on the live chat, I can't pull up this person's name. If I can, I will certainly call them out. Oh, here it is. Graphic God says, Fox has been biased towards Romney. Do you think, I mean, you're watching kind of, obviously as a Democrat, but outside the scope of things. I mean, that's what you do. You look at things. You're an analyst. How do you think the media in general are treating these candidates? There's been some mudslinging here recently saying the media are responsible for Newt Gingrich not being as popular. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I disagree. I was watching Fox News yesterday in preparation for this interview and saw a whole host of interviews with Huntsman, with Santorum, and I think Fox is being absolutely fair to all the candidates. So I would disagree to that point. I mean, again, back into the money buys constituent love and the money buys politics. The people who are in front of the camera often have the money to be in front of the camera and to get more camera time, airtime, ad time. But in terms of Fox representation of the candidates, I think it's been fair.
All right. Michael Shank joining us this morning, Vice President at the Institute for Economics and Peace. Good to see you. It is at Michael_Shank if you want to tweet him and follow him on Twitter. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.